How do you create an invoice? Just on this screen where you've added your billing items, right next to the Add Billing Items button, there is a button called Create Invoice. Now, upon clicking this button, you will be navigated to another pop-up. Now, this looks a little different. Your pay vendor ID is automatically populated. That is something that we have on file. If you find that out to be incorrect, please reach out to Angela regarding that. You do have an invoice date, and all of this is already pre-populated. You do not have to do anything. Your customer remark is something you can enter, but it is not required. So an example of this would be if you use a payment software to track your invoices already, and you want to link that this invoice is the same as another one within your payment software, you can go ahead and enter in invoice 32 or the name of the invoice or whatever you wanted to track. Now, please remember in this customer remark field, you will not be able to use space. So if I do go ahead and click space, it does not register. You will not be able to add in anything besides letters and numbers. So any dashes, any parentheses, and any symbols will not register. You might click on them, but they won't work. And you go over to your account code. Everyone in this meeting is an attorney. So once you go over to your account code, you do select attorney from here. Upon selecting attorney, your account code will be populated. Now, before you do anything, you do want to add your billing items to the invoice. And now this table right here will show all billing items that have not been attached to an invoice. So there's no way to attach a billing item that has already been submitted via an invoice to another invoice, unless it's been rejected. Then that is the only case. You see the report down here and say, I want to select both of these billing items and I want to attach it to this invoice. Under selected, there's these check boxes, which I just checked and unchecked. It's the left-hand side of the screen. It's the farmost corner of the table. You come over to the selected text boxes and you click on it. And once you see a check mark appear within that box, that means it is selected. So for say we want to select both of these. We come up to here, we select these two, and please be aware you are not done after selecting these. You do have to click this Attach Billing Items button right here. Once it's clicked upon, your total amount field will go from 0 to an automatic calculation of the total amount of all of your selected billing items. So right here, we selected both of these billing items. The amount of this one being 153.60 cents, the amount of the other one being 112.32 cents. And then we are able to get the total amount of 265.92. Now, if you do accidentally attach something, as long as you don't create the invoice, you are still able to modify it. You just, for say, let's just go ahead and unselect this. And once we click Attach Billing Items again, the total amount is updated and only this item is selected. So for this example, we're going to select both items. And once you do select both items and you do make a change in your selection, you do have to go and click Attach Billing Items again. So anytime, once you're done picking out the selected items you do want to attach to an invoice, just go up here, click Attach Billing Items, and your total amount will be populated. If you just select these and you do not click Attach Billing Items, you'll be given an error that your total amount cannot equal to 0. And in case you receive that error, that all that means is you just have to click the Attach Billing Items button. Once you're done with this, you can go ahead and click Create. Now, upon creation, if we scroll down on this page, there's a pending invoices section. Now, this is where your invoice is located. So we see an invoice ID for it, your pay vendor ID, the date your invoice was created and submitted, a case tracking number, your invoice status, which is automatically changed over to pending, your customer remark, which is invoice 3290 for this in this scenario. And please note that the customer remark is not mandatory. You do not have to enter anything in if you do not want to. You see the total amount of your invoice and your account code. So that is how you create an invoice, and I will show you another example of creating an invoice as well. So we have created this invoice right here. If you took note, the payment status for the billing items that are attached to the invoice goes from pending to submitted for approval. Now, in order for us to receive your billing items, your payment status does need to go submitted for approval. When you add a billing item in here, it goes to this payment status of pending. Now, pending means it's just within the system, as we want you to bill on a constant basis. So whenever you're done, now keep in mind that this app is available on your phone through the same website link. You go ahead, click through it on your phone, and upon navigating to this, you're able to add billing items straight from your phone. So if you're sitting in court, you can go ahead and add any billing items that you need. And until you attach those billing items to an invoice, they will not be submitted to us for review. So you can add as you like. They will be saved within the system, so you can always come back and add more. And whenever you would like to bill for it, which we do want you to bill on a constant basis, so every 30 days or so by the end of the month, you can go ahead and create an invoice. You go over, and once you create an invoice, your payment status will be changed over to submitted for approval. And now I will show another example of this. So going back to our previous screen, this is where all your cases are listed. We are going to go into the example that we used last week. Was it Tony the Tiger, I believe? Yep. So if you see here, we didn't create any invoices last week. We only added these billing items. So if you look at the payment status, they are all on pending. That means they have not been submitted for approval. We will not be able to see them on our side, but they're still saved within the system. Again, you come over down to your billing details section. On the right-hand side, right next to add billing items, you see the create invoice button. Upon clicking on it, you'll be shown this screen. So like I mentioned earlier, your vendor ID, if you do not find it correct, please reach out to us. Everything is pre-populated from the vendor ID to the date, to today's current date, which is the invoice date that your invoice would be submitted on. Your case tracking number, your bar number, and your invoice status is already set to pending. Your customer remark, as I mentioned, is not a mandatory field. So we are going to leave that blank for this example. You go over to your account code, and since everyone is an attorney, we select the account code of attorney from this dropdown. So to get to the dropdown, you go over to account code, and you just click on this upside down triangle right here. Upon clicking down to that, you just click on attorney and your account code will be populated. Now, if we look down here, we see all of the pending events that are still able to be attached to an invoice. So we are going to go and click on 2 of these events, and we are going to attach billing items. Remember, once you select these, your total amount will not automatically be populated. You click on attach billing items, and your total amount is calculated upon whatever you selected, the math is automatically done for you and there's no need to do anything else. So now we're going to go ahead and create this invoice. To create the invoice, just come over here to the right-hand side and press create. Now the invoice is created. So you see the payment status of these two fields changes from pending over to submitted for approval. That means we've gotten these on our side and we'll be reviewing it shortly. Coming down to here, which you just have to scroll down below your billing details section, there's a pending invoices section. So once you do submit an invoice, it'll show in here. And if I may, Jill, could you go ahead and could you accept the invoice for this case with the case tracking number of 568-42107 or 105-01? And before you do the invoice, could we take them just to the pre-approval step? So could you pre-approve it?
Absolutely, I can. I'm getting it open now. Let me pull this open. Okay, there are 2 items here, so I'm going to pre-approve. And if you want to refresh your page, you should see them now set as pre-approved.
All right, perfect. So now the payment status, once pre-approved, gets switched over to pre-approval. Now that doesn't mean that it has been approved. That means it's been the item itself has been pre-approved. Your invoice would still be showing under your pending section. Now, Jill, if you want to go ahead and give it ACA approval.
Absolutely. One moment, please. It appears to be done. If you want to refresh your page for me, please.
Yep. And now, once it passes through the second point in our system, it has a payment status of ACA approval. That does not mean, ACA approval does not mean it is ready to be paid out. There is still one step in the process still ahead, and your invoice will still show under pending invoices. Now, Jill, if you want to make your way over to the finance screen and approve the invoice.
I believe I did. If you want to refresh your page for me.
So now, when finance approves your payment status and your billing items goes from ACA over to finance approved. Now you see under pending invoices, your invoice is missing. It's no longer there because it's no longer a pending invoice. If you scroll down on the page, the next section you will see is your approved invoices. This is where the invoice appears. The invoice status gets switched over to finance approved as well. And there's a finance approved date, which is listed that it was approved on this date. Now, you will not see the payment for this instantly. It has to go within our accounts payable to get paid out. So, but this is the last step of making it sure that it passes through our system. And once it's under finance approved, you have pretty much nothing to worry about. The money will be coming in shortly. And Jill, if we want to go over to the UGA, the Bulldog case, and could you please could you please accept these items?
Pre-approve them or take them all the way to finance?
Take them all the way to finance and then reject the invoice
That
and
I
give a
can do.
reasoning for it.
Once the invoice is submitted, you're telling us we got more to do?
No, you have nothing more to do.
So-
I'm just
so
sharing the process of
all this
approval.
is just the process that happens.
Yep.
Nothing we gotta do. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, we want you to see it, Evan, so you can see the different statuses, because we know that people might have questions on where are you in the process of reviewing my invoice? Where are you in the process of getting this paid? So we want you to see the different approval stages so that you know how we got to where we are.
I get it.
Okay, so it's just for your information only, and certainly to just be transparent on where your bill is in the process.
And just to emphasize the fact, once you have created the invoice and you've attached the billing items, there's nothing more that you need to do.
How long does it take for them to get paid immediately once approved, or every 2 weeks, or how quickly?
No, so it does not get paid immediately. It still has to go over to our accounts payable department to get paid out.
And then how long does it take from there?
It depends, Rosemary.
We'll better
Okay.
know after we do it. We have not.
Sorry, Taj, I rejected that invoice for you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Joe. So now when an invoice is rejected, the payment status of everything on that invoice goes back over to pending. And instead of being under pending invoices, your invoice is shown under rejected invoices. You are given a rejection reasoning, so you know why the invoice has been rejected. So for this case, it says, this is a tier 1 case, and both of the items on this invoice are for different tiers. Please correct these and resubmit. So now we go back over to here. Since these are pending transactions, these have not been attached over to a new invoice. We are going to edit both records over to a tier 1. And right now I've fixed the errors that were given under the rejection reasoning on why the invoice was rejected. So when an item is rejected, you do have to create a new billing item in order to attach it to another invoice. So we would go down here, record, view, discovery tier 1, and say we're just going to submit one of these records. So the 21st at, actually the 19th at 3:26 p.m. and the 19th at 4:26 p.m. Then for now, we are just going to do OIC. We're going to go ahead and create. Now, when we go over to our create an invoice, the new event will show here. So whatever you have previously attached to an invoice, you cannot reattach to another invoice. And this section will only show items that are not attached to an invoice. So we're going to go ahead, select this, go over to account code and click attorney and attach billing items. Now we are going to go ahead and create the invoice. Note that the payment status is switched over to submitted for approval. Joe, could you accept this invoice? Could you pass it through? Okay, now if we refresh the page, we see that the invoice has left pending invoices. What you attached, the payment status has gone to finance approved, and the invoice is shown under approved invoices. You still have access to your old invoice because they are two completely different invoices, and you are still able to see that this invoice is rejected. And just to go a little more over the approval process on a visual standpoint, Natalie has created a diagram for us to look over. So when you add a billing item, you go over to the payment status of pending. When you submit it on an invoice, the billing item goes over to a status of submitted for approval. Once submitted for approval and we receive it, there's 3 stages that it goes to. So it goes through pre-approval, and now this is referring to the billing item. ACA approval, this as well as referring to the billing item, and finance approval. This refers to the billing item and the invoice. Both the billing item and the invoice will show finance approval once approved. Does anyone have any questions up to this point?
There's a question in the chat about, do you create an invoice for each case?
So you have to create an invoice in order to get paid. You can create multiple invoices on a case. There is no limit. It's just how often you want to get paid on that case. But for every case, there is different invoices and they're not associated with each other. So for UGA the Bulldog, for example, we had this invoice that got approved. As you can see, the invoice ID was 463. But if we go over to Tony the Tiger and see the approved invoice there, the invoice ID over here is 462, and the total amount is completely different because the invoice that you create is associated with one certain case.
Terry, does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Once you add a billing item and then you submit it within an invoice, that's all you have to do. Everything from there on is our process. And we just wanted to highlight over the approval process so you knew at which stage your billing was at. All right. Thank you everyone for attending.